Day three has concluded at the Ageas Bowl, or Ageas Bubble, as George Dobell and I are calling it. George, you had probably a much better seat than I did. West Indies 318 all out, a lead of 99 at stumps on day three. You did say that if the West Indies gave themselves a lead of 100 and change, they would be in a good position to win. So do you think they made the most of what was supposed to be a much better batting day than what we've seen before?
Oh, I guess you could always do a bit more, but yeah, I think they did really, really well. I do. I think they did really well, and I think they're in a fantastic position to go one up in the series. And look, let's put it in context. West Indies side hasn't won here since 1988, a series, and I don't think any side's beaten England in a series in England since 2014 when Sri Lanka did it. So whichever way you look at it, they've given themselves a really, really good opportunity to go one up, because you have to say, England have got to score probably need to score 340, 350 just to be in with a chance. And I think that England batting looks a bit brittle. And, I thought West Indies bowled very well again in the evening. So, yeah, they're in a great position.
What impressed you the most about West Indies batting, especially today? Because like we said, we saw two half centuries, but nobody really went on to make a big score, so to speak. There were some useful double figures here and there too. So what impressed you the most about how they strung it all together?
The fight. I thought that they were patient. I thought that they showed England how you have to bat in these conditions. You see, I think 50s are about as good as it's going to get on this wicket. I think it's really, really difficult. So, I think we said after the first day that 250-ish was about par. And although sort of I've fluctuated a couple of times, I still think that's about right. So if England are a little bit under and West Indies are a little bit over, the combination gives West Indies a really decent position. But I thought that several guys in that West Indies side, Brathwaite obviously, but Chase and Dowrich, they really battled. And I thought Dowrich looked really uncomfortable against the short ball often, but he didn't give it away, did he? He may not have liked it, and he didn't exactly know how to play it, but he battled through and he made an important contribution. So I thought all those guys did really well, and they showed England how to bat in Test cricket, just as their bowlers have shown them how to bowl.
God, how did that taste coming out of your mouth? But anyways, you mentioned Kraigg Brathwaite. I read an interesting stat in him because it showed that he was playing the ball a lot later than the rest of the West Indies batsmen. Now, he's spoken about minor changes here and there that he says he's done to improve his game. Do you think that that was of significance, at least in this innings?
It's hard to tell. He was a little bit more open than I've seen him in the past, which I like. But I think with Brathwaite, so much of what he does is just about sort of dogged determination. He has got a fairly solid technique, and to be fair, slower pitches probably suit him. But, so often with batting, such a boring thing to say, but I'm going to say it anyway, so often with batting, it's not just about what you do, it's about what you don't do. And the fact is, he doesn't go flashing outside off stump. He doesn't get drawn into big shots very often. You saw how Jermaine Blackwood gave it away. He played a poor shot. So, you don't really see that from Brathwaite very often. And, that's what's really impressive. There's still a place in this format of the game for defiance and discipline and determination and patience and all those old-fashioned virtues that sometimes seem to be going out of the game. But we've seen the value of them here.
Very Shivnarine Chanderpaul-esque. It won't be pretty, it won't be entertaining, but I'm going to stay there. And you got.
Well, it's slightly different with Chanderpaul because I always felt he was playing within himself because he had another gear. He could always. So he was playing within himself, and he was quite often playing in different periods of his career. But quite often he's playing in a better side than this. Mm-hmm. Brathwaite's very, very important, but I also think he's quite limited. I don't think he's the most. He's no Brian Lara. But he knows that, and he's very important to this side. And it's so important to get through the new ball, to see off Jimmy Anderson, Jofra Archer's first spells. And he did that really well. It's not by any means the first time he's done it really well against England. And I'm always surprised by how poor his record is sometimes. Coming into this series, his record of late has been very poor. And many other countries would have dropped a guy who was averaging 12, I think, in his last 4 series, something like that. Most countries would have dropped him. But he's shown why it was wise to stick with him and that he has a character that they like. I mean, he is, in many ways, a leader. And I think, Jason Holder must think he's worth his weight in gold.
Well, then you mentioned, of course, Jimmy Anderson and Jofra Archer with the new ball. You said it was definitely going to be a crucial moment to see exactly what England did with it. And when they were probably leaking a bit more runs than they would have liked, it all came back to a certain Stuart Broad. You know, I have to bring him up. They did get to speak to him, and he did candidly open up about his frustrations and how he was angry actually that he wasn't selected for this. Just what did you think about his comments, and how much should we even read into them?
I thought his comments stayed on the right side of being reasonable. I thought that you like a guy to want to play. I mean, you wouldn't want him to be sitting there going, whatevs. You know, I've got my career, you know, whatever I do now, I'm going to go down as a great of English cricket. You wouldn't want him to think that. I love the way that he's never satisfied and always wants to play. I do think, though, there's an element that his comments probably put a bit of pressure on the players who are playing. But hey, it's Test cricket, you know, got to get used to it. Whether he would have been the answer, I just think we've got to be a wee bit careful about exaggerating how good his record is in England in the last few years. Because I think, as I said yesterday, he's got 1 5 for his last 28 tests in England. So that's a period going back almost 5 years. So let's not pretend he was necessarily going to be a complete destroyer. Now, as it happens, I think he probably would have bowled quite well on this wicket in retrospect. But, you know, I thought Mark Wood bowled really well, actually. He's got 1 for 74. I've never seen him sustain that pace for as long. 22 overs, I think his last over was up in the 90s. Could he have been more accurate? Yeah. Could he have got more movement? Yeah, probably. But actually, you can't just judge by the results. And I thought that we've been crying out for England to have some pace in their attack. And he provided it. He really provided it. So let's not just leap on the fact that Stuart Broad would have made everything different. He would actually have been another right-arm, fast-medium bowler. And, you know, there's no shortage of those, eh? So maybe, actually, it was Sam Curran that England missed. You know, a bit of left-arm swing and variety. Maybe it was Chris Woakes who gets a bit more movement. But, so, you know, Stuart Broad, yeah, he might have made a big difference. He might. But let's not just presume that he definitely would have done, because his record in the last few years doesn't... It suggests he would have done a very sound job. You know, he certainly would never let England down. But, you know, these guys who are out of the side, they so often become the solution, and it's a bit unrealistic, I think.
And then finally, of course, good that England didn't lose a wicket before the close of play today. Crucial first hour, I'm sure, for the hosts tomorrow. What are you looking to see from them in that first hour tomorrow?
Oh, but from an England perspective, they just need to survive. I thought West Indies bowled really well in that last hour or so, and I thought it was really, really tough. But the fact is, England would have settled to get through, and by getting through, they're still alive in the game. But hanging on by the fingernails, in my view. I don't see this as a batting lineup that scores 350 very often. I don't. I'm sorry. I think it's too reliant, without Root, yeah? I think it's very reliant on Pope and Stokes. And I think there's a player or two in that top order who aren't up to it. I'm afraid I do. Prove me wrong. I'll be delighted. So I think that they're asking an awful lot of themselves on a pitch that I think will remain fairly helpful for bowlers and against a very, very good attack. So, you know, people will talk about the toss decision. People will talk about the selection. Whoever you pick, whatever you do, bat or bowl, you've got to do it better. You've got to do it well. And I don't think it's so much that decisions are right or wrong, those sorts of decisions anyway. It's you make them right or wrong by your performances. West Indies have just played better. It really is that simple. They've bowled tighter, they've kept the pressure on more, they've bowled fuller. And they've batted with more discipline and determination. So that's the real reason. And I just think it's a mistake to look at the toss and the selection, because I don't really think that's the difference.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube, and for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app, and for premium content plus live streaming, make sure to subscribe to ESPN Player.